This is the topic I was most excited about covering in this entire series. It's called power mapping, at least that's how I learned it. It probably has many names, and let's get into it. I think it is the most powerful tool for organizers. Just using it puts you in the correct mindset to be asking the right questions, to not be a doomer, everything. It does everything. So let's get right into it. The first thing that you're going to want to do is when you're with your organization, well, actually, before you meet with them, you're going to want to go to Dollar Tree and you're going to buy one of those big white poster boards and you're going to buy some Sharpies and you're all going to sit down together at a table and make this together. This isn't something that one of you does on your own. This is a group discussion. It guides group thinking, group consensus making. Now, what you're doing this for is, I should have led with that, is you're going to figure out how to solve a problem that you're going for. You're waging an issue campaign. You've got an issue that you're working towards. Now, I'm going to assume that you've already come to one. We're going to go over choosing an issue and actually waging an issue campaign in the next video. But right now I'm going to assume that you all came up with one. And for this example, I'm going to do this one. We want to get City Council to pass a grant in next year's budget to build 1,000 affordable housing units. This is really concrete. I know that name seems really long, but that's perfect. It's very, very exact. You're going to, as a group, write this at the top of your big poster board. That's the first step. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to draw a nice graph. You're going to draw two lines that intersect with some arrows on them. I did this beforehand because I'm bad at drawing straight lines. This is basically what power mapping's setup is. You've got your goal on the top, the specific thing you're trying to do, and then this chart, which we're going to fill in. And in filling in this chart, everything becomes clear about what we should be doing in this issue campaign. Now, the first things first, we're going to need to label some of these axes. Now, everything that's above the horizontal line, above the line means powerful. And therefore, below the line means not powerful. But don't think of this just in terms of a dichotomy. Dichotomy is just a $10 word that means black and white, binary, 1 and 0. The higher up, the more powerful. The lower, the less powerful. And now everything on this side represents for us. And over here, against us. This might not make a lot of sense right now, but it will when I tell you that we're going to be filling this in with dots. Okay, that might not make sense either. We're going to be filling this in with dots that represent people, specific people. So for us, powerful or not powerful, this dividing line right here determines whether that person can actually do the thing that we need them to do. So in this case, we want City Council to pass a grant in the next year's budget. So who has a vote on City Council in passing grants for the budget? Well, it's City Council. So let's start by putting City Council members on this chart. Now, they're going to be somewhere above this line because each one of them gets a vote. But are they for us or are they against us? We might not know. We might have a good idea of where they go, right? And talking with people in your organization or with other people, you'll be able to guess where they fit on this line. For right now, in our example, I'm going to assume that we have a 7-person city council and that we think 2 of them are about here and the other 5 are roughly like this. That's our best guess. So we know these 2 council members over here, they're Ayn Rand fanboys, basically. They never vote with anyone on anything. They want to privatize the police and other things like this. And then these 2, they seem to be sort of for us. They might agree with us. We're pretty sure that they'll do something for us. And then these, we're going to say probably not, but they're close. Now, for us, this line means this axis, means how likely this person is to act with us. So maybe we have a city council person who's here. They're the one who actually put up a bill suggesting this exact thing of getting the city to pass a grant funding these affordable housing units. But for us, we're going to assume, okay, it's probably likely that they'll vote this way. Right? And I mean actually casting their vote in city council, right? Actually raising their hand when it says, actually saying aye or yay or whatever it is, not just simply speaking about it in public. Now, we're also going to fill out, I'm going to say, because this is pretty typical, that in this there's also a mayor. Now, depending, some mayors can veto legislation, some can't. To make this example simple, I'm going to say that this mayor suggests a lot of policies, all right? His say goes a long way in the city council, but he doesn't have veto power. And we're going to say that he's against us. So I'm going to label this as mayor, and I should probably go back up here and label this as the 7 council members. Now I'm going to put in some other dots over here. These are the government officials, but let's do another one specific to this housing unit example. Let's go over here, and I'm going to put in a dot over here. Well, maybe I'll put in 3 dots, and this will make a little bit of sense. This is the zoning board. For those of you who don't know what a zoning board is, it's sort of like what all of the American propaganda said that the Soviet Union was, but in real life and in the form of people who tell you what you can do in your own house. It's unironically, that is what it is. It's this unelected body of people who pass laws about what you can do on your own private property. And their word is gospel, essentially. And they're usually quite reactionary, and they usually put a lot of restrictions on you. We're going to put them over here because any project that funds these affordable housing units, well, that's something the zoning board is going to be involved in because they're the ones who approve zoning for new construction. And they are the ones who determine whether those types of structures can even be built. Right. It might actually be that because of their zoning regulations, it's impossible to even build 1,000 new units of any type. It's just impossible. So we're going to put them here. Now, there's a question of who else we should include and who we shouldn't include. Well, I'm going to add us. All right, let's do green. We can all be more green. I'm going to put our organization. Let's assume that we're pretty small. It's just 5 of us. I'm going to put us over here. We're definitely for us, right? Maybe not always. Sometimes we don't do things that are good for us in terms of the organization, but we're probably not too powerful. In fact, if it is just 5 of us, as I've drawn here, we're probably going to be closer to down here, but whatever, this is just an example. So we've got us, we've got the council members, we've got the mayor, we've got the zoning board. Who should we not include? I'm going to give an example. Here's someone we shouldn't include. This is Ben Shapiro. Now, Ben Shapiro, I assume, spends his days thinking about how to make poor people's lives worse and, twiddling his thumbs and tapping his fingertips together with a maniacal laugh. He is someone that we should not have on our chart, and we shouldn't even talk about him at the discussion. He is so irrelevant that it doesn't matter how against us he is. He's not powerful. Now, he does have power, but this powerful, not powerful metric is for this specific issue. That is what power and not power means. It's not power in an abstract sense. It is this exact thing that we're trying to do that power matters for. So Ben Shapiro should not be included. Likewise, I'm going to put someone else down here. I'm going to pick a nice purple color. This is a stranger on the internet. Do not include them either. Even if they really, really agree with you, if they're not powerful, they're worthless, okay, for this discussion. It's not worth talking about, and you shouldn't talk about them either. Your friends here will also agree with you. If they're not actively organizing and you don't think that you'd be able to get them to organize, don't put them on this chart, right? They live somewhere else. They're really, really busy with work and school and stuff, whatever. Now, for right now, let's not fill in any more members of this chart. Instead, let's talk about what our goal is. Our goal is to get as many dots as possible into this quadrant, and actually as close to this corner of it as possible. Our goal as organizers for this specific issue is to either move dots to the right or move dots up, to either make people who agree with us more powerful or to make the powerful people do what we want. That's our entire goal. And it becomes pretty obvious from right now who our focus should be. It's probably these 2. There's 7 members on the council. We need 4 to win. And these 2, we think, are pretty close to being able to just pop right over and agree with us. It could also be, okay, maybe we want ourselves to be bumped up into power where we get, the ability to pass city budgets. Well, that seems to be an option. We could get elected to city office, or we could overthrow the city council and then run everything as an anarchist collective. But, that's probably a little too big in scope. So what we now need to focus on is what's easier, getting people to the right or getting people up. And left-right here doesn't mean anything. It just means, it doesn't mean left-right politically. It just means agreeing with us or not agreeing with us. Well, if it's an election year and we think we have a chance of winning, then maybe this route is the easier option. That would also have the effect of bumping maybe one of these down, right? Maybe these people are who we run against, or maybe one of these gets bumped down and we get bumped up. But usually it's going to be easier to try to either convince people that are pretty close in city government or to just force their hand. Organizing is often forcing people in power to do what you want. I hope you're starting to see the power of just simply laying out this chart. It makes it pretty obvious what your next steps should be, right? You should find out exactly how close these people are. You realize I shouldn't waste my time with any of these people over here, right? The zoning board, well, if the city council and mayor want to do something, they can't actually say no because the zoning board is appointed by them. So maybe afterwards when it gets passed, the new issue is getting it actually through the zoning board, and then we have issues to consider. But for right now, we're just talking about getting it passed. Now, what do you do if while going through these things, you find out, oh, well, actually, this person right here, I'm going to call her Alice, Councilwoman Alice, we're actually wrong, right? In talking with some of these council members and in other community representatives, it turns out, well, actually, her daughter moved to Seattle, and fell on a hard time and became homeless for a little bit and had to move back. And so Alice is actually one of the most ardent supporters of affordable housing. So Alice, it turns out, is actually over here. You should keep this chart in your organization. Someone should be responsible for it and for bringing it. And then when you're all together and you're discussing the new information you have, you should decide as a group, maybe Alice is actually over here. Based on what we know, how can we rely on Alice? Is it just talk? Is it not just talk? And that's what happens. It's a living document. This power mapping guides you every step of the way. Every step. Now, what do you do if, for example, you can't convince these council members right here? Well, we're gonna get into that in other issue campaign things. But to give you a preview, one of the things that we can do is we can work through a side target. So if these two are our targets, I'm going to call them B and C, we can work through a side target. So I'm going to put a side target down here. This is the local union. Maybe it's the custodial workers union, right? It might be the Teamsters or something. Now, maybe this union, they don't really have any say in what laws get passed in the city government, but they represent a large voting bloc, and they can, go on strikes and things. They're a huge, they represent a lot of workers who work for the city, for example. And maybe what our goal should be is to try and focus our attention on getting the union to force the hand of these council members. That's called working through a side target. These two are our main target, but maybe we need some extra oomph. This is often what minorities have to do. They often have power with, not power by themselves in society. They often have power with. So especially if you find like some rich white guy, who's well connected and he believes in your cause, you can probably use him. You'll have power with him. If he goes and makes a stink at the mayor's office, then suddenly the opinions of black people, oh, this is a big political issue. You have to have power with. I'm not saying that's exactly what you should do, but anyone who's a minority sort of understands that that's how it works a lot of the time. So what if now it's an election year? We still are in the same situation of these people, they won't budge no matter what. This person is definitely not going to budge, right? He's a libertarian, and this person is not budging either. Well, now you've got some options. Maybe, for example, there are some candidates who are running for office. And maybe you wouldn't put these all at the same thing. Maybe there's one down here and maybe there's one down here. Here's the weirdo who always runs and he never has any chance, but he does agree with you. And here's someone who is the long shot candidate, but he seems like he would vote for you. Now the discussion becomes, well, maybe to get this issue solved, we need to focus on getting these dots up, which at the same time would bring one of these dots down depending on who they're running against. And now, again, pretty clearly, as the situation updates, you know what you should be focusing on. You can talk about which of these arrows, it seems a little crazy to think about it, but you can talk about which of these arrows it actually seems more feasible for you guys to accomplish, for all of you to accomplish with more information that you get. Think about how much knowledge there is and how much understanding there is on this chart. It sort of makes you feel like a conspiracy theorist because you are conspiring to get all of these actors to do what you want. And that's because that is what you're doing. And that's why it's so powerful, because things that are just informal talk become concrete knowledge that we can work on. Now, if it is an election year, something really interesting happens in that there are some other tactics you can use. For example, the union comes into play. These candidates come into play. If the union endorses, then suddenly these candidates become a little bit more powerful if the union is powerful. But one of the things I want to talk about is, if you make this an issue in the election year, this doesn't work after they're elected, but if it's an election year, you can sort of force this issue. Maybe these candidates pledge to actually move this way in order to get votes. Maybe they don't. Maybe they say, actually, we're going over here. That happens a lot with the Democrats, right? It seems like they talk nice, and then once push comes to shove, they sort of veer that way to contrast themselves. And in that case, you focus on getting these candidates elected. But you can make this a central issue. There's sort of now pressure for everyone to take a side, for these people to either move over or move out of the way and make room for these people. Now, one of the ways you can do this, I want to talk about the last entity I'm going to draw on here. I'm going to put them over here. This is the news. Now, the news, I don't put either for or against us, because the news is against everything. They're always about selling outrage. All right, reading the news makes you stupid, but everyone does it. So what does the news have to do with this? Well, our organization, we're not that big. So what we say and what we think is not news. What we do can be news, depending on what it is, right? There are various stunts we can do. There are other tactics, but something that could work for sort of forcing the hand of these two council members involves the news. I'm going to tell you a story. Without any prompting, my local paper where I'm from, true story, in the months leading up to an election, made their front page story the voting records of every local elected official. Not who they voted for, but just how often they themselves voted in local elections. Because it's a matter of public record how often you vote. Elected officials, often when you go and contact them, they'll ask for your name to see whether you vote or not, so that they can determine if they have to listen to you. The news published this, and it was a huge shaming. They went down name by name and showed what percentage of the time this politician who wants you to vote for them actually went out and voted in the past 20 years, I think it was. That was a huge shaming, and it wasn't on any particular issue. But now the politicians are in hot water because their whole thing is, what does the public think about me? How can I make it so that the public think at least positive enough about me that they'll stand in the line and check the box next to my name on the ballot? That's all a politician cares about you, is whether you're going to do that. What are you thinking, and is it thinking stuff that'll make you do that? So if you think that they're not someone who goes out and votes, well, they might get worried. Now, you have to be willing to cast a vote for someone else, for example. Maybe one of these other people, these other candidates say, well, actually, I vote in every election. I've always voted, But that's an example of something the news could do. Try to make it a story. To give an example, one idea for this 1,000 affordable housing units issue, it's probably the case that your community needs affordable housing. It's a big issue and everyone's aware of it. Look at the city budget and see what else, which would cost around the same, that they have been spending money on. For example, maybe there was a parking garage, which is worthless and does nothing but pollute the city more by letting cars in, Maybe there was some other horrible project that got funded that much. Because when the city comes and says, we can't afford that, we can't float a bond to support this, look at what they have supported in the past with their money. For example, to talk about 1,000 affordable housing units, it'll cost about $100,000 American to build a single affordable housing unit if you're doing maybe a 5/1 style. So multiply that by 1,000 and you've got about $100 million. That's not too extreme for many cities that would be needing 1,000 affordable housing units. Look at what debt the city is in, because they're almost certainly in debt, and see what it was. That could be a story that you bring to the news. Look at what the city spent hundreds of millions of dollars on while countless residents are homeless or can't afford to pay their rent, right? People are leaving because our city has prioritized building a parking garage instead of building homes for our seniors. Something like this. Make it a story. The news will run with it because all they care about is getting people angry. So that's power mapping. I hope you agree that it's the best tool for organizing and like it as much as I do. Next time, we're going to talk about actually waging an issue campaign, because this is the tool that you're going to be coming back to periodically during the issue campaign itself. Issue campaigns have stages, right? Finding out information about where each of these council members are, that's something you'll do in the issue campaign, using investigation. Figuring out whether your tactics should change, what your strategies should be. That's part of the issue campaign. How you react to what these other people do. So that's next time. It's a big topic. I hope to see you there, and I hope you enjoyed this video.